In a hillside village, construction and maintenance work was underway on residential buildings. The area featured houses scattered along the slope, with motorcycles parked on dirt paths and power lines running overhead. The ground was littered with construction debris and materials. A man in green clothing stood near the base of a house, while above him, a worker performed plastering work on the upper exterior wall of the building, approximately 11 feet above ground level. The worker had no safety harness or fall protection equipment as he carried out the finishing work on the structure. Without warning, he suddenly lost his balance and fell from the upper portion, plummeting downward and hitting the hard ground below with devastating force despite attempts by the person below to catch him. Working at any height requires proper fall arrest systems and secured anchor points to prevent fatal falls. Inside a manufacturing facility, production was running at full capacity with multiple workers operating around a large green industrial machine designed for processing materials. The multi-tiered conveyor system moved sheets through various stages, with workers positioned at different points to monitor and adjust the flow. Wood scraps and materials were stacked nearby on the factory floor. A worker in a blue shirt approached the side of the machine while it was actively running. Suddenly, the worker in blue became caught in the moving mechanism, his body violently pulled upward into the machinery, his head twisting at an unnatural angle as coworkers rushed forward in horror. Never reach into operating machinery without lockout, tagout procedures, and proper machine shutdown. Inside a textile dyeing facility, large industrial machines lined the production floor, designed to process fabrics using high-pressure steam systems. A worker moved about the facility, operating the pressurized steam dyeing machinery as part of the normal production cycle. Suddenly, one of the pressurized vessels catastrophically failed, unleashing a massive explosion of superheated steam that filled the entire workspace in an instant, engulfing the worker and sending him flying off-screen. Pressure vessels require regular inspection, safety valves, and strict monitoring to prevent fatal explosions. Inside a storage area, a massive concrete slab leaned against the wall at an angle, with bags of materials stacked behind it. A worker in blue clothing rested on a small cot positioned near the base of the heavy slab. Taking a break from his shift, another worker moved about the cramped space, reaching behind the propped slab to retrieve materials stored in the difficult-to-access area. The concrete panel appeared stable, held only by its own weight and the items around it. As the second worker pulled at materials wedged behind it, the massive slab suddenly lost balance and toppled forward, crashing down onto the resting worker and crushing him instantly. Never position yourself beneath unsecured heavy materials. Inside a steel fabrication facility, workers processed long metal beams arranged across work tables and support frames. The spacious workshop had high ceilings with overhead cranes and hoisting equipment suspended from above. Several workers moved about the production floor, coordinating lifting operations. Steel beams of various sizes lay stacked on tables, ready for processing and transport. A worker stood near a beam positioned beneath the overhead hoist, guiding the rigging operation as the crane prepared to lift the heavy steel piece. The hook descended and connected to the beam's lifting points, appearing secure. As the hoist began raising the massive beam upward, the rigging attachment suddenly failed without warning. The multi-ton steel beam detached from the crane and plummeted straight down, crashing onto the worker below and crushing him instantly. Always inspect rigging equipment and use redundant safety attachments for overhead lifts. Inside a warehouse, workers wrapped pallets of bundled materials using stretch film. The spacious facility had stacks of white, wrapped pallets positioned throughout, with several workers moving about coordinating packaging operations. A man operated the wrapping station, walking in circles around the pallet to apply the plastic film evenly. A forklift began reversing without the operator checking behind. The worker, caught mid-rotation with his attention on the wrapping, stepped directly into the forklift's path and the heavy rear wheel rolled over his foot, crushing it severely. Forklift operators must always check blind spots before reversing and workers must stay alert to vehicle movements. Designated pedestrian walkways and audible reversing alarms prevent these crushing injuries in shared workspaces. At a railway crossing in a residential area, a pedestrian was near the tracks when a train began approaching. Recognizing the danger, the pedestrian attempted to warn an approaching motorcyclist about the oncoming train. Despite the warning and visible signals, the motorcyclist failed to brake in time. The bike continued into the path of the train, resulting in a collision that proved fatal. This tragic incident underscores the critical importance of obeying railway crossing warnings and maintaining appropriate speeds near tracks. Railway crossings are high-risk zones where even brief lapses in attention can have deadly consequences. Motorists must always slow down when approaching crossings, remain alert for warning signals, and heed warnings from bystanders. Trains cannot stop quickly, requiring hundreds of feet to halt. Railway safety depends on every road user treating crossings with extreme caution and never attempting to beat an approaching train. At a loading area, two forklift operators were working together to secure a large tarp over construction materials. The workers were coordinating their efforts to pull the heavy covering into place when one of the forklifts began to tilt dangerously to the side. The operator, sensing the instability, jumped from the cab in an attempt to prevent the machine from toppling over. Despite his desperate efforts to stabilize the equipment, the forklift continued its fall and came crashing down directly onto the worker, crushing him with its significant weight. This devastating incident highlights the severe risks of forklift operations, particularly when performing tasks outside standard lifting procedures. Forklifts have high centers of gravity and can easily tip when loads are unbalanced or when operating on uneven surfaces. Operators should never exit a tipping forklift, as this places them directly in the fall path. Essential safety measures include ensuring level operating surfaces, never exceeding load capacity limits, and using proper equipment for unconventional tasks like tarp installation. On a residential street in Bodrum, construction workers were performing excavation work using heavy machinery to dig into the roadway. Workers wearing high visibility vests were positioned near the excavator as it dug into the ground. During the excavation, the machine's bucket struck an underground drinking water pipeline. The pressurized pipe ruptured violently, sending a massive geyser of water and debris into the air that engulfed the work area and nearby workers in seconds. This dramatic incident highlights the critical dangers of excavating without proper utility location and verification. Underground utilities, including water mains, gas lines, electrical conduits, and telecommunications cables, pose serious risks when struck by heavy equipment. Before any excavation begins, comprehensive utility mapping must be conducted, all lines marked clearly, and operators briefed on their exact locations. Workers should use hand digging or vacuum excavation near marked utilities rather than mechanical equipment. At a facility entrance, several people, including officers, were manually closing a large sliding gate. As they worked together to move the heavy industrial barrier along its track, a catastrophic structural failure occurred. The gate suddenly collapsed from its mounting system and fell directly onto the people positioned below it. Two individuals were struck and crushed by the falling structure, resulting in their deaths. This tragic incident reveals the deadly potential of improperly maintained gate systems and the extreme dangers of manual operation without proper safeguards. Large sliding gates rely on secure mounting brackets, track systems, and support mechanisms to remain stable. When gates must be operated manually, workers face compounded risks if structural integrity has been compromised.